After 4 different crossover fighting games, Shonen Jump was prepared to make waves with their latest crossover 3D arena fighting game, Jump Force. A game that was meant to be a celebration of Shonen Jump's history for their 50th anniversary. After being announced at E3 2018, it was immediately met with widespread hype as gamers were looking forward to the ultimate Shonen Jump crossover game. But when it finally released a year later on February 15th, 2019, that hype came to a crashing halt, as it was quickly revealed that this game was nothing more than a cheaply produced cash grab, one that would only last 3 years before being shut down and removed from all digital storefronts. Jump Force was revealed during Microsoft's E3 2018 presentation to what I can only describe as thunderous applause. Not much was shown of Jump Force, but it was enough to generate massive hype. What was featured was an admittedly well-animated and clean-looking cutscene that would ultimately become the game's opening cutscene, as well as very early gameplay. The only characters revealed were Naruto, Luffy, Goku, Frieza, Light, and Ryuk, which was very misleading. While those first 4 are actual playable characters, Light and Ryuk are not. They're simply NPCs in the story mode, so showcasing them alongside actual playable characters was a pretty malicious move, especially considering they add nothing of substance to the game, besides Bandai being able to boast that Death Note is in Jump Force. And don't even say it wouldn't make sense, because plenty of fighting games have been able to turn non-fighting characters into fighting characters, like Villager in Smash Bros. And Phoenix Wright in Marvel vs. Capcom. It was also revealed that the game would be published by Bandai Namco and developed by Spike Chunsoft. Up until this point, Spike Chunsoft was mainly known for their line of visual novel games, namely Danganronpa, but they also had dabbled in the anime game genre with releases such as One Piece Burning Blood and J-Stars. J-Stars being the Shonen Jump crossover fighting game prior to Jump Force, which received fairly mixed reviews. One Piece Burning Blood also received mixed reviews, so going off of Spike Chunsoft's record, it seemed like Jump Force would most likely receive mixed reviews as well. However, seeing as how they developed J-Stars, fans were hopeful that they would take the criticisms directed towards that game and use them to ensure that Jump Force would be the best game it could possibly be. About a month later, Bandai released a second trailer which gave fans a first proper look at the gameplay, and people were eating it up. The main topic of discussion was the graphics. Everyone seemed to be praising them, but looking back on it now, I think it looks really ugly. My issue with it is that Spike Chunsoft tried to make the game look realistic and gritty, but these are manga characters. They're meant to look colorful and vibrant, but instead they look dull and uncanny. But my thoughts can't change the reception of the time, and for most fans, the release date couldn't come soon enough. As the year passed, Bandai periodically released new trailers revealing characters for the final roster, culminating in a full character roster trailer only a few days before release. This trailer started to reveal the true Jump Force, and some fans started to see through the rose-tinted glasses. While not the majority, there were still people pointing out the fact that the roster was missing a lot of classic characters and seemed to be biased towards One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, and Bleach. Despite these misgivings, the overall excitement level was still high, and with the game releasing in only a few days, it seemed like it was bound to be a hit. As for me, I'd pre-ordered the game on Xbox One and was excitedly awaiting launch day. But when I finally got my hands on the game, I, along with many others, realized that we had been duped by Spike Chunsoft and Bandai Namco, and that Jump Force was not the celebration of Shonen Jump that we were looking for. On February 15th, 2019, Jump Force officially released worldwide on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC to a storm of negative feedback. On Metacritic, Jump Force sits at an average critic score of 56, an average user score of 4.4. While this does factor reviews of all dates into account, it's still reflective of the overall sentiment regarding Jump Force at release. It was meh. This overwhelming sense of mediocrity was the result of a number of factors: lackluster gameplay, an underwhelming story mode, a poor character roster, and an overall sense of cheapness, each of which I'll dive into deeper in a little bit. Despite the majority thinking Jump Force was mediocre at best, there were still anime fans willing to defend the game with their lives. I should know, I was one of them. I worked on a review for the game with my friend, which has since been privated, where I defended the game simply because it was fun to fight as your favorite anime characters, which is seemingly the main defense that Jump Force fans had at the time, but I digress. Let's move past the reviews and take a close look into what made Jump Force fail. Jump Force is a 3D arena fighting game, a genre not new to anime games. Most anime games are 3D arena fighting games, such as the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm series, the Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi series, and many others. It's no doubt an oversaturated genre, especially at the time of Jump Force's release, but technically, if this is supposed to be the ultimate celebration of anime, then it would be fitting that it's a 3D arena fighter. But personally, I would have preferred a game in a style similar to Dragon Ball FighterZ. I won't go over all the controls in depth, because who cares, but what you need to know is that there are light attacks, heavy attacks, and special attacks. The problem with these attacks is that they feel exactly the same no matter what character you're playing. The light attacks are just a string of basic attacks that you can use by mashing a button, heavy attacks are the exact same except slower and deal more damage, and special attacks are where you would think that there would be more variety, but there really isn't. While every character technically has 3 different special attacks and an ultimate, their special attacks are basically one of 3 options: a big projectile, a dash attack that gets a cinematic close-up on contact, or a counter, and every character has some combination of these 3. The ultimates have more variety and look pretty cool for the most part, except the frame rate noticeably drops during some characters, the most obvious being Naruto's. There are also awakenings, where some characters will change appearance, but not all of them. The main problem with this fighting system is its simplicity. There's nothing deeper to learn, no mechanics to really explore. There's a stamina meter that allows you to dash out of enemy combos that you have to manage, you have to charge up your special meter, yeah, that's practically as deep as it goes. Overall, there's just nothing exciting and unique about this gameplay system. You can get through this game by just button mashing and spamming abilities. There's barely any room for strategy or combos. Spike Chunsoft took an incredibly safe route when developing this, which led it to be janky and dull, meaning that there's no room for competitive play whatsoever. While gameplay is of course the foundation of any video game, some games are able to get by with lackluster gameplay because of their incredible story modes. However, Jump Force does not fit that description at all. While some fans were able to cope with the gameplay by passing it off as at least being fun, something that everyone can agree on, both critics and fans, is that the story mode is nothing short of garbage. The story mode opens with a cutscene where we're introduced to the basic premise of the story, that being that different Shonen Jump villains are invading real-world locations but using generic bad guys called Venoms. But luckily, the Shonen Jump heroes are here to stop them. What's interesting about this opening is that it's from the first-person perspective. However, you get hit in the crossfire of a fight between Goku and Frieza. You're close to dying until Trunks and this robot thing called a navigator decide to bring you back to life as a hero. This leads into the character creator, which I have a lot to say about. I am a huge fan of character creators. It's what started my channel and is the reason I'm here now. So when it was first announced that Jump Force was going to have a character creator, I was ecstatic. I was ready to make a ton of character creator tutorials, adding as many characters into the game that I could. Then I realized that the character creator in this game is awful. You start by choosing your gender, then you choose your fighting style. At launch there were only 3. One for each of the big 3, Goku, Luffy, and Naruto. They all play exactly the same, but look slightly different in game. A little while after launch they added a sword style, but no option to choose your sword, so your character just attacks with this generic blue blade. After that you can adjust your body with height, body type, and chest sliders, except adjusting these does practically nothing, as the variation from one end of the slider to the other is incredibly minuscule, so you can't really make a super buff character, or an overweight character, or a really short character, but you can make your skin color whatever you want, so that's cool, I guess. Then we move on to hairstyles, where the vast majority of these are just hairstyles from characters already in the game, and the ones that aren't from in-game characters are from characters that didn't make it into the game, like Sakura and Rock Lee from Naruto. On one hand, I appreciate this, because it means you can easily mix some of these characters that didn't get into the game with the character creator, but on the other hand, it just seems lazy that they couldn't give us many original hairstyles. Aside from these options, you can choose your eyebrows, ears, eyes, pupils, nose, mouth, jaw, scars/face paint, and voice. This may seem like a wide selection of choices, but they all look practically the same. Truthfully, every character you make will look exactly the same aside from hair and clothing, which brings me to the clothing itself. From the start, you wear this generic black outfit, but are able to unlock other clothing and accessories throughout the game. Just like the hair, most of these are just ported over from existing characters already in game. As for the original clothing, all of them look very generic and out of place. Take this hoodie for example. The shade of blue is very bright and doesn't gel well with the dark and edgy art style the game is going for. The last part of the character creator is abilities. There's not much to discuss here. You can unlock or buy the abilities of most characters and equip them to your character. That's about it. When you're playing an actual match, your character is just completely lifeless. This goes for story cutscenes too. Your character's facial expressions practically never changes, and you choose a voice just to never use it. This character creator is really disappointing. I was looking forward to it, and it was a tremendous letdown. Moving past the character creator, let's get back into the story mode. As you're brought back to life, we're introduced to our first of many poorly animated cutscenes. This type of cutscene is what you deal with for the majority of the game, and it is just awful. Characters stand in one place and go through the same stiff idle animation, barely moving, while speaking the cheesiest lines ever written. We're then transported to Umbra's base, the home base of the Jump Force, a team of various different Shonen Jump heroes dedicated to fighting back against and defeating the Venoms, and now you get to join their team. A lot of exposition goes on in this scene, and it's really not worth me explaining. All you need to know is that Shonen Jump villains have teamed up and turned people into evil Venoms using cubes, which are just MacGuffins, and are plotting to take over all of the real world. There are also a couple of original villains that are working behind the scenes to also take over the world. It's a really generic story that's used in almost every crossover fighting game story mode. It would be passable if the game's structure and gameplay made up for the weak story mode, but it doesn't. I already explained how the gameplay is mind-numbing button mashing, but the structure of the story mode really hammers that in. The general gameplay loop of the Jump Force story mode goes as follows. You accept a mission from an NPC, you go through a slow loading screen. You watch a cutscene, you go through a slow loading screen. You have a generic battle, you go through a slow loading screen. You watch another cutscene, you go through a final slow loading screen, and now you're done. This story mode is a slog to get through. It's incredibly repetitive, it's just the same normal battles over and over, the cutscenes are lackluster, the animation is poor and the writing is boring, and the loading screens are insufferable. You spend more time looking at loading screens than you do actually playing the game. So the story mode isn't worth it at all. But the story mode isn't really what makes or breaks a game. That honor would go to gameplay, which we already discussed is terrible. However, the main defense in favor of Jump Force is that it's at least fun to duke it out as your favorite Shonen Jump characters. But somehow, Bandai Namco even messed that up. Jump Force launched with 40 playable characters, but received a free update including 3 characters, as well as 14 DLC characters, for a total of 57 playable characters. For context, Jump Force's predecessor, J-Stars, had 39 playable characters, so comparing launch rosters, they had roughly the same amount, which may seem like a good thing, but it really isn't. J-Stars released 5 years before Jump Force, and its character roster had a great variety of different series from all eras of Shonen Jump, as well as each character feeling and playing differently from one another. This is proven by the numbers. Jump Force has 16 different series represented in-game, whereas J-Stars had 32 different series. Granted, some of those series were from support-only characters, but the numbers don't lie. Looking at Jump Force's roster, it's mainly composed of characters from the same 4 series, a couple of new-gen series, and a couple of old-gen series. Including DLC, Naruto has 6 characters, Dragon Ball has 7 characters, One Piece has 7 characters, and Bleach has 7 characters. J-Stars limited a series to having 4 characters at most. And even then, only one series had 4 characters, and that was One Piece. Because of this strict rule, they're able to include a variety of different series, including popular old and new series that Jump Force didn't get to include, like Assassination Classroom, Psyche K, and Gintama, just to name a few. Jump Force, on the other hand, crowded their roster with so many characters from the same series that they had no room for other lesser known series. It feels less like a celebration of Shonen Jump, and more of a celebration of Naruto, Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Bleach. And I didn't even mention that those 3 free update characters Jump Force received were Jump Force original characters. They couldn't even be bothered to give any new free characters away, so they just turned characters that were already bosses in-game into playable characters. I guess if you're a fan of the Big 4, then this is a good roster for you, but it just isn't a proper celebration of Shonen Jump's history when they exclude a number of series that are represented in past Shonen Jump crossover games. Moving past my previous 3 points, Jump Force just can't shake off this overall feeling of cheapness. I may throw the word cash grab around lightly, but there is no denying that Jump Force is a cash grab. I don't have a confirmed source for this, but Jump Force was supposedly in development for 3 years prior to its announcement at E3 2018, meaning it was developed in about 4 years. I'm not going to pretend I know anything about game development because I don't, but I do know that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate took took 2.5 years to develop, roughly half of Jump Force's development time. Obviously, the Smash Bros. Team was larger and had a larger budget, but even with a 2-year difference, it blows Jump Force out of the water. Jump Force is just chock full of cut corners, bugs, and glitches. I know a lot of people like the art style, but honestly, it just looks cheap to me. They want to make the game realistic and edgy, but that doesn't fit anime and manga characters at all. They're meant to look animated, not realistic. It just leaves every character looking lifeless and uncanny. Even moving past the art style, the graphics just don't look very good. A lot of textures are off. All Might, for example, looks like he's made out of plastic. And like I said before, with the cutscene animation, the characters look that dull in matches too. There's just no life to this game. Jump Force should have had a fun and vibrant art style that matches the whimsical feeling of most anime, but it goes with the exact opposite, leaving itself with an identity crisis. Is it really a celebration of Shonen Jump and everything it stands for, or is it an edgy and soulless cash grab meant to appeal to as many people as possible, even if it means going against how anime should be portrayed? You can also play free battles offline and ranked and unranked matches online, but the gameplay is the same old button mashing slop. Despite the initial hype, Jump Force quickly died after release, and no amount of DLC could stop the inevitable. Jump Force sold decently well on release. In Japan, it was the best-selling game of the week on PS4, with 76,894 copies sold. In America, it was the second best-selling game of February 2019, and the fourth best-selling game of 2019. Despite those sales numbers, Jump Force struggled to hold a player base. Looking at Steam charts alone, the game debuted with 2,048 players in February, but dropped to 711 players 1 month later in March. Now don't necessarily look at the numbers, but look at the percentage drop-off. That's only 34% of the game's initial player base. Now I don't have the numbers for every platform, but I'm sure there was a similar drop-off on PS4 and Xbox One. Jump Force was apparently popular enough to be nominated for a Game of the Year award for Best Fighting Game in 2019, right alongside Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Yeah, that was a nice joke from the Game of the Year awards. Jump Force received DLC for 3 years following the game's launch in hopes of earning back its player base, but the numbers never reached launch numbers. That was until they announced the game was being shut down. The announcement came on November 10th, 2021. Jump Force was to be removed from digital stores on February 8th, 2022, and the online servers will be shut down on August 24th, 2022. With this announcement, numbers on Steam charts reached an all-time high with 4,408 players in October 21, and slowly decreased until it was a measly 367 in February 2022. Despite most people's misgivings during its launch, it seemed that the game's death was still a moment of sadness. I thought it was quite sad, mainly because of the wasted potential that was Jump Force. Jump Force was a mistake. A blunder on account of Bandai and Spike Chunsoft. What was meant to be a celebration for Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary was nothing more than a soulless cash grab meant to appeal to the masses rather than actual fans of Shonen Jump. Jump Force is not the Shonen Jump crossover game we deserve. I have no doubt that Shonen Jump will attempt another crossover game, but I can only hope that they'll learn from the mistakes they made and make the Shonen Jump crossover game that we truly deserve.